So, eighth update, specific issues regarding baseless patches. Now, what do I mean with baseless patches? Baseless patches are patches that have been sent in to developer.blender.org without the patch containing a commit hash reference or somebody supplying that manually in such a way that it's actually included in the database for diffs. There are some places where people might have put this in the comments regarding a pull request where they say, look, this one was built based on commit message blah. But the database for diffs supports having the diff be the diff information be augmented with information about what commit hash does it refer to. Now, there are quite a number of these. That is to say, I've made a small tool that goes through all the 15,000 something pull requests in the totality of developer.blender.org, so not just for a BF Blender project, but all projects that are there, and figures out whether or not there are diffs included with that pull request, and if there's a diff included, does any diff have a reference to a commit that has been made into Blender or into a repo. Now, the reason I do this is the following. There might be a patch submitted with a single commit hash at the beginning, like, hey, here's the one commit that I started off with, and then I started making a diff, and then I made multiple revisions that don't have any reference anymore, but at least one contains a reference. The first one. This is likely rare, but it might exist. More frequently, you will see something which is the reverse. Somebody made a patch file which gets a number of revisions, maybe, and then at some point, somebody said, hey, yeah, this looks good. It applies cleanly. We've actually committed it into Blender, and great. And now the diff has a commit hash related to it, which tells it when that patch was included. So we kind of have a base of what to look at. And what I mean there, I'll explain a bit later why this is significant, why we want to have this. But if I look at just everything and figure out how many there are that have no base, it turns out that there are, from the top of my head, 795 accepted patches that do not have a commit hash included in any of the diffs. So there are basically patches which got accepted that at some point were just included in Blender, but we don't have a database contained reference as to which commit that included that patch. Now, 795 of those, I've done a random sample of 3 of them, and every of those 3 had a manually made comment in the comments saying, oh yeah, look, this was actually included in commit blah, blah, blah. And this has been done manually, sometimes because it might involve somebody saying, look, this code has been, included with or merged with some other patch and then committed as part of the commit of that patch, making it one thing, or somebody just simply forgot to add the commit hash. I'm not quite sure how the mechanism works when saying, hey, include this patch, but apparently this is something that is not necessarily automatic. It's a bit based on the workflow, I guess. But in 3 out of 3, the commit message or the commit hash was actually available to us, but not included in the database in such a way that we can automatically mine it, scrape it out of the database and insert it into the Gitea database. And we do need to do that. We do need to have a Git hash for anything that is a diff. Gitea does not have any way of keeping in coherence the moment you start not doing this type of thing. So just giving a patch without a reference is not an option. Before I continue, there are also 28, if I'm correct, 28 baseless, so diffs without any kind of commit hash in patches which were accepted, not published but accepted. So there's two states. There's many more patches which are abandoned, so they are not so relevant so much. And then there's denied as well. For those, we'll also have to figure out, like, what does it mean? Like, what is the base? What were they built against? Now, here's the bottom line. If we want to get those things into Gitea, we will need to provide some way for Gitea to know what a valid commit hash is for each and every of the diffs that include these types of that are included in these types of pull requests and reviews. To do so, having at least one diff in that set have a reference, like a commit hash, means that we can either go forwards or backwards in time and use the moment that the diff was submitted as a way to figure out, like, okay, this is between this and that commit in the repo. Let's do a bisect and see if we can get this patch to apply one to one or the other, and we have to decide probably on the side of the later commit, the earlier commit. Like, hey, this commit, it applies cleanly, and this commit was present when this person was making the diff, so we can use the commit hash of that commit to be included in the Gitea version of this data. This is something that is going to be quite important for us to do to start getting right. It basically means that we do have 795 without any base. Those we'll need to figure out what to do with in any case. We'll have to basically make some kind of mechanism to decide, like, okay, well, it says the patch was accepted at some point. Let's just assume that the date of the last diff was and then the commit after was the time that this patch was included. For 795 of these, we could actually also go through the tickets, through the pull request, and see if there's like a manual commit hash posted in the comments. And this is kind of a large task, but doable. 795 is not impossibly large. Most likely, if I data mine these things by grepping for commit hashes, I might be able to automate over 80% of that, and then 20% is left over to do manually. So this seems to be a task which is within the realms of perfectly being possible. But for the 10,000 or so accepted and published patches that we have included in the Blender repository, there's going to be a fair number that only have the commit hash of the final acceptance and are lacking the previous diffs commit hashes. They just don't exist, and we'll need to have a strategy which basically says, okay, well, if this one was accepted, then let's go back, let's look at the date the diff came in, let's take the commit just before that, see if it applies cleanly, and then augment the data of this diff with the commit hash of that commit. Basically, that's the bottom line of the strategy that we're going to work on. This is something that I've discussed at length with Matti, and this is really the biggest thing that he's going to be working on in the direct near future. For reference, I'm going to be away for 2 weeks. This is something that I really want to have hammered out at the return of from my vacation, so that we can start implementing this logic and making sure that we can import this type of data in a meaningful way. Once that's cracked, together with import fidelity, so data fidelity, we should be able to put this into Gitea in a meaningful way and start showing people what's there. So that's part 8.